I want to talk more about this temple and tabernacle in the tabernacle in the wilderness, representing how I believe it represents the kingdom of Yahveh. Because what were they in the wilderness? Why were they set apart? They were taken out of Egypt so that they could be set apart. Egypt was a type of the world. Be in this world, but not of this world. And that one of the separations, in one of the videos I've done about the temple representing, the true temple being in heaven, and I looked at the atmosphere as part of the holy place, because we don't go there. We go out and come back, but we can't stay there beyond like 24,000 feet or whatever. We can't stay there. But I want to correct that a little bit, tweak that a little bit, that it's more about the world is the outer court. Anywhere in the world, the nations are the outer court. The sea. The inner court is Israel. What Israel is in this world, Israel is a postage stamp size country. It's about the size of New Jersey. And yet, why they're persecuted so much? And granted, the state of Israel is a secular state right now, but there's a spiritual concept there that I'm trying to bring out. The land of Israel, that being Israel, Paul talked about in Romans 11. All of Israel will be saved. All of the set apart ones will be saved. But what sets us apart? The rules of the kingdom. That's why I seek to follow Torah, because I'm declaring what kingdom I am a part of. That's how I'm an ambassador. Like Paul talks about, I'm an ambassador for Christ. He talked about himself being an ambassador for Christ in chains. How? Because he was preaching the word, he was doing things. He was seeking to comfort people and to help people grow closer to Yahveh. He was planting seeds, and maybe that's why I kind of find this interesting. A concept I heard in one of the things I listened to was that one of the reasons why Israel was scattered was to scatter seed throughout the world. And eventually we will be gathered out of the world physically. But we are in the world, but not of the world. How are we not of the world? Torah. You read Torah, that's what, like, things like that, why the clean and unclean meats mattered. Of Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14. Why they mattered. Why do we have Leviticus 23 about the holy days? They're the appointments of the king. They're appointments of Yahveh. Let's read here in Leviticus 23. The Lord spoke again to Moses, saying, "Speak to the sons of Israel, and say to them, the Lord's appointed times, which you shall proclaim as holy convocations. My appointed times are these." My appointed times. The first one is the Sabbath. Verse 3 is all about the Sabbath. For 6 days work shall be done, but on the seventh day there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convocation. You shall not do any work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwellings. Verse 4, these are the appointed times of the Lord. These aren't the feast of the Jews. These are the appointed times of Yahveh. These are the appointments of Yahveh. And we're approaching Passover. That's part of how we become out of the world. It's the invitation to come out of the world. Like you read about Mystery Babylon. Come out of her, my people, that you shall not receive of her plagues. And you shall not be demolished with her. And where? Inner court. Inner court is where we are transformed. Be not conformed, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. How does that happen? Inner court. Read, pray, obey. You're not going to be transformed unless you read this book, but you also have to obey this book. He's not looking for how much knowledge you have. He's looking about obedience. He says, I prefer obedience rather than sacrifice. Yes, there's grace, but he doesn't want us to use grace as a license to sin. It isn't a license to sin. If we turn away from the laws of Yahweh, the instructions of Yahweh and the Torah, what are we doing? And you read Leviticus 23 all about the holy days. It's all related to a Jewish wedding. There's a point there. The sabbatical years. That's why they were thrown out of the land, because they didn't obey the commands of Yahweh. They did what was right in their own eyes and things, and you read in Judges and see what happened there. Read Leviticus 23. You read in Leviticus 20 not to have human sacrifice, not to have the whole point is, I think, in verse 7, you shall consecrate yourselves therefore and be holy, for I am holy, for I, the Lord, am your God, your king, so to speak. I am Yahweh, your king. What does Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh represent? Behold the hand, behold the nail. Which hopefully you find significance there, as it should be. Adultery is defined. Homosexuality, bestiality. Those are things that the world does, but the people of Yahweh, the people of God, are not to be doing. The people of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords are not to be doing. How do we recognize him as salvation? By looking at the sacrificial system, that there was a way that illustrated those sacrifices, illustrated the sacrifice, the cleansing of the temple, how it was cleansed in the through Yeshua, by the shedding of blood. And without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. But we read in Leviticus, we read those things about that. We read things about what is moral and what you should and shouldn't be doing. You read the book of Deuteronomy. It's kind of a summary of a lot of this stuff. That's one of the places you might look to start to kind of get a grasp of what you're told to do. But Leviticus 19, you shall not show partiality to the poor nor defer to the great. You are to judge your neighbor fairly. What's wrong with that? 17, that was verse 15 here. Verse 17 says, you shall not hate your fellow countrymen in your heart. Verse 18, you shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the sons of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. What did Christ say was one of the greatest commandments? Love your neighbor as yourself. Love Yahweh with all your heart, with all your strength, and with all your spirit and strength, and everything, basically everything. And love your neighbor as yourself. Well, it's written right there. It's written in several other places. You shall not breed together two types of cattle. It talks about you shall not mix wool and linen. You shall not sow two types of seed. And you can look at the seed sower parable and look at who sows the tares. The seed is the word of God. And the question is that seed going to grow in you? Is that seed that is in you, is that a mustard seed which grows a big tree? Like it talks about one of the parables of the mustard seed, having faith of a mustard seed, and that seed grows to be a giant tree. Little tiny seeds become apple trees and orange trees and all sorts of different things. From a little tiny seed that's like tiny. And yet, that's what this is all about. What is Leviticus? Leviticus is showing us how to separate the holy and the profane. Leviticus 19. Separating the holy and the profane. Why do you have instructions about what the priests are supposed to be doing? And who can serve as a priest? They can't have deformities, they can't have this, they can't have that. It's to show you how that not anyone can approach Yahveh. And you read in Leviticus 18 about immoral relations. Things you're not supposed to be doing. It's all to show us the separation between the holy and the profane. The profane being the world, the holy being Israel. It says in Peter, you are a holy nation, a royal priesthood. How can we be holy if we're unwilling to even acknowledge the stuff that we're supposed to do? It shows Messiah. Messiah is on every page. If you read it, if you look at it. It's all about the kingdom. It's all about living proper. That's why it says all these things. We're not to move our boundaries of our neighbor. That's property rights. We're not to bear false witness, both of our faith, but also we are not to bear false witness. We are not to try to lie to get someone convicted of a crime. That's a sin in Yahweh's kingdom, and we have to have a heart for others. It says several places that we have to have a circumcised heart. It says the pure in heart shall see God. We have to have a pure heart. We have to have a circumcised heart to enter the kingdom. That's why it says, many will say, Lord, Lord, and he says, depart from me, for I never knew you, you who practice lawlessness. He said, we did this in your name, and that in your name, and cast out demons, and we did this and that. And he says, I never knew you, you who practice lawlessness. It's all about an invitation. You can read in John about the parable of the wedding, I believe it is, of, he sent out people all over the place, and it might be in some of the other Gospels, but he sent people out, and the ones that were invited didn't come, so he went to everywhere else and invited them. That's what this is all about, is showing people the kingdom. Why? So they want living the Torah, which is the rules of the kingdom. Showing love toward other people is the best invitation you'll ever see. That's what this is all about, is inviting people to be of the kingdom by your conduct. Hopefully this is inspiring. Shalom, shalom.